They gave her $4 in tips all night at closing. The Mafia Boss said, "Count again." Rookhaven doesn't sleep. It just rusts. The salt mist from the harbor crawls up the avenues, clinging to the neon, making the red glow of the Starling Diner bleed into the fog. It was midnight, closing time. The bell on the door was silent. The chairs were flipped upside down onto the tables, and the cash drawer was empty. Well, almost empty. The till itself held the bank, but my tip jar was pathetic. I dumped its contents onto the laminate counter. 1, 2, 3, 4 single-dollar bills. They were damp, crumpled, smelling faintly of cheap beer and regret. $4 for 8 hours of running plates, refilling coffee cups that were never emptied, and smiling until my jaw ached. "Sign the sheet, Lena." Trent Barlow didn't look up from his ledger. He slid the clipboard across the counter, the metal scratching the surface. Trent was a man built of soft edges and hard rules, a company man down to his greasy polo shirt. I stared at the new tip-out sheet. The math was creative, to say the least. "Trent, this isn't right," I said, my voice tired. "Table 7 paid cash. Their tip isn't on here, and the kitchen service fee is 20% tonight. It was 15 yesterday." "New rules," he mumbled, tapping his pen against the paper. "Corporate sent the memo. We're standardizing. Just sign it." Standardizing theft, that's what it was. But arguing with Trent was like yelling at the fog. It just absorbed the noise and stayed put. My eyes flickered to the last occupied booth in the corner, the 3 construction guys. They had been nursing the same 3 beers for 2 hours, getting louder with every empty glass. They were the ones who left the $4. "Hey, sweetheart," one of them slurred, his voice scraping the silence. "You forgot your tip. Come on over here. I got a real tip for you." My stomach tightened. I could feel their eyes on my back as I wiped down the espresso machine. I looked at Trent. He was busy counting receipts, suddenly deaf. I looked toward the door. Sal, the temp security guard, was outside on the curb, the orange glow of his cigarette the only sign he even existed. He was probably getting paid more than I was to do nothing. "Standardized?" I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, quiet rage that had been building for months. I signed the lie. Trent grunted, snatched the clipboard back, and locked the ledger. He didn't say goodnight, he just disappeared into the back office, the lock clicking shut. I took the 4 damp bills, I smoothed them out on the counter. $4. I folded them once and slid them into my wallet. The vinyl was cracked, the seam by the zipper giving way. It wouldn't even hold loose change anymore. I looked around the diner, the smell of old grease and burnt coffee, the flickering fluorescent light over the pie case that no one ever fixed, the sticky patch on the floor by the jukebox. I finished wiping the machine, hung my apron on the hook, and grabbed my thin jacket. That was it. I was done. Tomorrow. I wasn't coming back. I'd go to the temp agency. I'd scrub floors. I'd do anything but come back here and let Trent Barlow and his new rules steal from me while drunks offered me real tips. I reached for the main light switch. The front door didn't chime. It rumbled. A vibration passed through the glass, heavy and low, rattling the aluminum frame. I turned. The close sign was still lit, but the door was open. A man stood in the doorway. He wasn't big, not in the way the construction guys were, but he filled the space. He wore a gray wool coat, the kind that costs more than my rent, but it was simple, unadorned. Rain clung to the shoulders. He stepped inside, bringing the cold mist with him. My heart did a stupid little jump. "Sir, I'm sorry, we're closed. We closed at midnight." He didn't look at me, not at first. He just moved with an economy of motion, his shoes making no sound on the tile. His eyes, they were dark, quiet, and missed nothing. I watched him take it all in. He looked at the stack of receipts I'd left by the register. His gaze drifted up to the security camera in the corner, the one with the dead black lens and the single, fake, blinking red light. He glanced at the pie case, where the handwritten price for apple crumble had a 5 written over a 4. He slid onto a stool at the counter, the vinyl sighing under his weight. A muted, brushed steel watch circled his wrist. It wasn't flashy. It was a tool. I instinctively reached for the coffee pot, but it was empty. All I had left was the dreg end of an espresso shot I had pulled for myself just before closing. It was sitting on the machine, cold. "Just an espresso," he said. His voice was low, gravelly, like stones shifting underwater. "That's all I have," and I said, sliding the small, cold cup toward him. "It's on the house. We're closed." He looked at the cup. He didn't touch it. He didn't move. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. The construction guys in the booth had gone quiet, watching. Then, the man in the gray coat looked past me, toward the closed office door. "Trent," he called out. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the diner like a knife. The office door clicked open. Trent stuck his head out, his face annoyed. "What? We're closed! Get out!" The stranger didn't turn. He just stared at the espresso cup. "Count again, or," he said. Trent stepped out, wiping his hands on his pants. "I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave. I'm calling the cops." "No, you're not," the stranger said. He finally looked at Trent. The full weight of that quiet, black gaze landed on him. Trent actually took a half step back. I said, "We're closed." Trent tried again. Puffing his chest, he walked behind the counter, reaching for the phone. "Get out!" The stranger pushed the cold espresso cup an inch forward. "You close the books tonight, you'll open them, and you'll count again." Trent laughed, a short, ugly bark. "Yeah, or what?" He turned, grabbing the key for the safe under the register. "You want to rob me? Go ahead. There's nothing in here." The stranger slowly looked up, his expression unreadable. "My name is Ricardo Neri," he said, the words dropping into the room like weights. "And tonight, Trent, you will make the book right." The name meant nothing to me, but it meant something to Trent. The color drained from his face. His hand, the one holding the safe key, started to shake. It meant something to the drunks in the booth, to... One of them, the loud one, made a noise, half laugh, half choke. A movement at the window caught my eye. Outside, in the mist. Two figures had appeared. They weren't dressed like the man at the counter. They wore dark wool sweaters and beanies, hands shoved deep in their pockets. They weren't massive, or scarred, or obviously armed. They just stood there, watching, waiting. The man at the counter, Ricardo Neri, didn't even look back at them. He knew they were there. The drunks in the booth knew, too. The bravado evaporated. They were suddenly very sober, fumbling for their wallets, throwing cash on the table way more than $4 and shuffling out the door. Giving the two men in sweaters a wide berth, they vanished into the fog. Ricardo Neri hadn't moved. His attention was locked on Trent. Trent, for his part, looked like he was going to be sick. I stood frozen, my jacket halfway on. I didn't know who this man was. He didn't look like a gangster from the movies. He looked like a businessman, maybe a lawyer, except for his eyes, and his hands. His hands were resting on the counter, palms down. They were clean, nails short, but on the knuckle of his right index finger, there was a small, pale, perfectly round callus. It wasn't the callus of a man who types on a keyboard or signs papers. It was hard, worn in. It was the mark of someone who spends long nights pressing a button, over and over, like the horn on a long-haul truck or the dispatch button on a dockyard radio. It was the mark of a man who watched the port. Ricardo Neri turned his gaze from Trent and, for the first time, looked directly at me. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't kind. It was just assessing. "He'll be a minute," Ricardo said, nodding toward the pale, sweating Trent. "You should wait. He owes you more than $4. The jukebox in the corner was still playing a low, mournful song about a lost love. Ricardo Neri lifted his chin, a short, sharp gesture toward the machine. I flinched, then realized he was looking past me. "The music," he said. I walked over and hit the switch. The song died mid-note. The silence that rushed in was heavier than the fog outside. It was filled with the hum of the coolers and the sound of Trent's ragged breathing. Neri's gaze slid to the corner booth, where the 3 construction workers were still frozen, coats half on. "Leave," he said. It wasn't a request. They scrambled to their feet, knocking a chair over. They didn't bother to pick it up, as the last one, the loud one, hurried past the counter. He kept his eyes down, but his lips moved. He mumbled something low and angry. Words I almost missed. "Hollow Bridge'll fix you." Ricardo Neri didn't react. He just waited until the door rumbled shut behind them. Then he looked at Trent. "The book. Open it." Trent fumbled with the key, his bravado gone, leaving only a damp, pale fear. He unlocked the ledger and slid it onto the counter, next to the clipboard I had signed. "You'll open the system, too," Ricardo said, nodding at the point-of-sale terminal. "I want to see the electronic journal, every keystroke." Trent's hands shook as he typed in his passcode. The screen lit up. Ricardo Neri didn't touch the book. He didn't touch the computer. He just looked. "Page 4, he said to Trent. "Your nightly closeout." Trent turned the page. "Reader tables," Ricardo said. "Tables 4, 6, 9, and 12. Trent read, his voice thin. "Order times: 8:05, 8:20, 9:40, 10:15. Cash receipts: Table 6, $41.50, Table 9, $18, Table 12, electronic, $102. "Everything matches my order slips," I said, my voice surprising me. It was steady, except the tips. The sheet says $4. Table 6 left 10 in cash. I saw it. And Table 12, the big one. They always leave 15%, always. Ricardo nodded. Slowly, he was still looking at the terminal. Not the book. The system pooled column. What is that? It's the new policy," Trent stammered. "Corporate. All tips are pooled and then redistributed after administrative fees." "Administrative fees," Ricardo repeated. The words sounded alien in his mouth. He looked up, past Trent, past me. His eyes settled on the ceiling. The cameras. I looked up, the 2 black domes, one over the register, one over the door. "That one," Ricardo said, pointing to the one over the register. "The light. It blinks every 2 seconds. The manufacturer's default is 1.5. I stared at it. He was right. It was a slow, steady, fake pulse. "It's a dummy," Ricardo said. He looked at Trent. "Who signed off on the system installation?" I don't know. A contractor," Trent said, shrinking. "You know," Ricardo corrected him, his voice soft. "Tell me." "Wardell Security," Trent whispered. They're the new contractors for the Solstice Urban Group. They're handling all the businesses in the redevelopment zone." Ricardo's gaze dropped from the camera to the wall behind the counter, where our permits were framed. His finger lifted, pointing again. That one. The Rookhaven Civil Preservation sticker. The blue one. I looked. It was a new sticker. We'd gotten it last month after a surprise safety inspection. "The seal," Ricardo said. "The city crest. The eagle is facing left. On the official press, the eagle faces right. It's engraved backward." My blood went cold. A fake inspection, a fake camera. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear, a week ago. Maybe 2. I was taking the trash out, late. There was a dark blue pickup truck, no logos, parked by the back kitchen door. I hadn't thought anything of it. But since that night, everything had changed. Mrs. Petrov, who came in every Tuesday for pie, stopped coming. She told me the prices were too high. The guys from the tugboat cruise. They stopped too. They said the service was bad, that the new staff was rude. But we didn't have new staff. It was just me and Carla. The rumors had spread through the docks like gasoline on water. Ricardo turned his attention back to the terminal. "Show me the electronic fees. The ones you pay out, not the ones you take in." Trent's face was sheet white. He clicked through 3 screens. A list appeared. Merchant services, POS rental, software licensing. There. Ricardo said. Internal administration fee, 22%. Show me the breakdown. Trent clicked. The screen showed a single, automated transfer. It goes to the corporate holding account, he said. It does, Ricardo agreed. He looked at the main sales ledger, then at the transfer amount. He did the math in his head, his eyes moving once. $114 from tonight's electronic tips. Your $4 was the cash left over after the pool took the rest. He looked at me. Your tips for tonight were $118. They stole $114. Stole, he said the word. He said it out loud. The air was so tight I could barely breathe. Trent looked like he was about to pass out. Ricardo Neri pushed himself off the stool. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, plain business card. It was thick, cream-colored paper, slightly worn at the edges. He slid it across the counter. It read Neri & Sons Logistics Consulting, just a name and a phone number. I'm done here, he said to Trent. You will fix this. You will give her the $114 she is owed, tonight from the safe. And you will fix the book to reflect it. If I come back and it is not fixed, the conversation will be different. Trent nodded, his head bobbing frantically as he scrambled for the safe. Ricardo turned to me. He held my gaze for a long moment. He'll give you the money, but your problem isn't him. It's them. He turned the business card over. On the back, written in pen, was a single sentence. Avoid Silt Alley tonight? Silt Alley, that was my shortcut. It cut 3 blocks off my walk home, running behind the old cannery. I took it every night. He watched me read it, then he walked to the door. The 2 men in wool sweaters materialized from the fog and fell in behind him. They didn't speak. They just moved, a 3-man unit of silence and gray wool, and vanished into the Rookhaven night. Trent was counting out bills, his hands shaking so badly he dropped a 20. Here, he said, shoving the money at me. 114. We're even. Don't say anything. Just take it. I took the money. I put it in my cracked wallet. It felt heavy. I walked out of the diner. My jacket pulled tight. The mist was thick, swallowing the streetlights. I didn't go towards Silt Alley. I went the long way, sticking to the main boulevard, my footsteps echoing too loudly on the empty pavement. I was halfway home when I heard it, the low rumble of an engine, idling. A dark blue pickup truck, the same one from the alley, pulled out from a side street. Its headlights were dim, almost off. It kept its distance, maybe half a block back, just pacing me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept walking. Don't run. He taught me that. I thought, my mind flashing to Ricardo, don't run. I turned the corner onto my street. The truck paused at the intersection. Just as it started to turn, the massive searchlight from the harbor lighthouse swept across the buildings. The beam flooded the street, catching the truck's cab. The driver's side was dark. The light was so bright it bleached the world white for a second. And when it passed, the truck was gone. It had reversed back into the darkness. I ran up the 3 flights of stairs to my room in Gleam Row. My hands fumbled with the keys. I got inside, slammed the door, and threw the deadbolt. I turned the second lock, and I wedged a chair under the knob. I sank onto my bed, my pulse roaring in my ears. My pocket vibrated. I pulled out my phone, an unknown number, 1 text message. Stop counting. Leave it alone if you want to stay safe. I stared at the words. They were stealing from me. They were following me. They were threatening me. All for $100 a night. All for a diner that was failing. I looked at the 3 locks on my door. For the first time in months, I wasn't just tired. I was angry. I was thinking about fighting back. The morning light in Rookhaven is just a shade brighter than the fog. I woke up with the chair still wedged under my doorknob and my wallet heavy on the nightstand. $118. I hadn't gone back to sleep. I turned on the small radio on my dresser. The news was on. A bright, professional voice announced the official launch of the New Key project by the Solstice Urban Group. They showed renderings on the morning news feed, gleaming glass towers. Happy, Well-dressed people walking dogs on pristine green lawns, sailboats bobbing in a clean marina. It promised thousands of jobs and a vibrant new future for the waterfront. I looked out my third-floor window. My view was of Gleam Row. I saw cracked pavement, a pawn shop, and the tops of the cranes at the real docks the ones Solstice wanted to tear down. This vibrant future had no room for diners, or pawn shops, or the people who lived in buildings with 3 locks on the door. It was just a different kind of counting, recounting the whole neighborhood until people like me were zeroed out. Before my shift, I stopped by the Harbor Line Development Authority. They were holding a community feedback session in the lobby of the old customs house. The lobby was full of suits and glossy pamphlets. A few locals, fishermen and dock workers, stood in the back, their faces grim. A man in a sharp suit, wearing a pin I didn't recognize, was running the meeting. He kept calling on people from a pre-approved list. Every question was about landscaping, or parking, or the color of the tower facades. When old Mr. Kaczynski from the bait shop tried to ask about commercial rent hikes, the man in the suit cut him off. "Thank you for your input," the suit said, his smile tight. "We'll table that for the Bureau of Urban Order and Logistics to review at the next logistical assessment." The Bureau. Another name I didn't know, but it sounded cold. It sounded like a locked door. As I was leaving, a woman with a messenger bag and a sharp, restless energy caught my arm. "Did you see that?" she said, her voice low and fast. "They just tabled the entire neighborhood." She had dark, intelligent eyes that darted everywhere. "You work at the Starling, right, Lena Mirek?" I tensed. "How do you know that?" "I know everyone who's getting squeezed," she said. She held out a hand. "Zadie Chow, Independent Press. I'm tracking something, a kind of shadow tip tax. It's hitting all the small businesses in the redevelopment zone, the ones Solstice hasn't bought out yet. Your place is ground zero. Can I buy you a coffee, son?" We sat in a 24-hour donut shop, the only place not owned by a corporation. Zadie spread napkins on the table like a general mapping a campaign. "It's brilliant in a sociopathic way," she said, tapping a napkin. "They don't strong-arm the owners. They bleed the staff. They introduce administrative fees. New security contractors like Wardell create system-wide tip pools. They make it impossible to earn a living. The best staff leaves, service tanks, the diner gets bad reviews, revenue drops, and suddenly the owner is desperate to sell. Solstice picks it up for pennies. Clean, no violence, just spreadsheets." "Last night," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "they stole $114 from me." Zadie's eyes lit up, a cold, bright fire, and someone made them count again. It wasn't a question. "I saw the report," she said. 3 drunks from Hollow Bridge getting tossed from the Starling by North Key boys. That's Ricardo Neri's crew. He doesn't move unless something is messing with his port." She leaned in. "You're in the middle of something, Lena. They're squeezing the neighborhood, and you're the nerve they just pinched." When I got to the Starling for my shift, the air was thick. Trent was waiting for me, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Lena, I've got to write you up." He stammered, holding out a piece of paper. It was a formal disciplinary notice. "For what?" I asked, though I already knew. "Bookkeeping disruption," he read off the sheet. "Questioning authorized managerial procedure, causing a disturbance at close." "You mean getting my stolen money back?" I said. Trent's face crumpled. "Please, Lena, just sign it. They're watching me. They're watching everything, that camera, the one over the register. It's not fake anymore. Wardell was here this morning. They put a real one in." He lowered his voice. "This is for you. Take the warning. Let it go. Just let it go. They'll fire you, and that'll be the end of it. It's better than the alternative." I took the paper. I knew he was just a cog, as trapped as I was, but I also knew he was a coward. I didn't sign it. I just folded it and put it in my pocket. "I'll work my shift," I said. The night was dead. The rumors, the new prices, the feeling of a place on its last legs. No one came in. By 8 o'clock, I had served two tables, $12 in tips, this time. I watched Trent log it. The system immediately took $10 for the pool. At 9, the bell on the door rumbled. Ricardo Neri walked in. He wore the same gray coat. He didn't bring the fog with him this time. He just pushed it aside. He sat at the same corner booth the drunks had been in, the one with the best view of the door, the counter, and the back office. I walked over, my footsteps loud in the empty room. "We're open," I said. "Can I get you something?" He didn't look at the menu. I don't think he ever looked at menus. "No. Sit down." I hesitated. "It's a slow night," he said. He wasn't asking. I slid into the booth opposite him. The vinyl was cold. "Trent gave you the paper, and he said..." "He did. Are you going to let it go?" I thought about the locks on my door. I thought about Zadie's napkins and the glossy pictures of the new key. "No." He nodded, as if I'd just confirmed a shipping manifest. "Good. They're stealing more than your tips. I'm going to stop them, and you're going to help me." "I'm a waitress," I said. I'm not like you." I don't want you to be like me," he said. "I have people like me. I want you to be exactly what you are, a waitress. No one sees a city like a waitress. You see everything, you hear everything, you're invisible." He leaned forward, just an inch. "I want to borrow your eyes." "What does that mean?" "It means you keep working. You keep your eyes open. You notice things. The men from Wardell Security, the ones who came this morning, what did they look like? What car did they drive? Do they drink coffee? Do they pay cash? The men in suits who come in and talk to Trent. What's on their briefcases? What time do they meet?" He was asking me to be a spy in my own diner. "It's just observing," he said, as if reading my mind. "You're not planting anything. You're not stealing anything. You're just counting the right way." "And what do I get?" I asked. "You get the last 3 months of your tips back," he said, his voice flat. "Every dollar they skimmed, I'll have it for you by Friday, and you get to keep your neighborhood." 3 months. That was almost $2,000. That was enough for a deposit on a new apartment, far away from Gleam Row, far away from here. I looked at his hands, resting on the table, the callus on his knuckle. "You're a criminal. They're corporate criminals. What's the difference?" For the first time, Ricardo's expression changed, a flicker of something not anger, maybe dry humor. "The difference, they wear better suits, and they're trying to steal the whole ocean. I'm just protecting my piece of the water." He leaned in again, his voice dropping. "They aren't just taking your money. Lena, they're recounting this whole neighborhood. They're counting you out. They're counting the fishermen out. They're counting the Starling Diner out. I'm just here to make them use the right math." I stared at him. He was right. Solstice was the bigger threat, Neri. He was just the shark that already lived here. "I'll do it," I said, "but I have conditions." His eyebrows raised, just slightly. "2 conditions," I said, my voice stronger now. "First, your people. North Key. They don't hurt anyone. Not innocent people. Not Trent, not the cooks, not anyone. I won't be responsible for that." "I don't make money by breaking my own port," he said. "We don't hurt civilians. It's bad for business." Agreed. "Second," I said, "the moment I feel wrong, the moment it gets to be too much, or you ask me to do something more than just watch, I'm out. No questions, no hard feelings. I'm done." He held my gaze. I could see the docks in his eyes, the cold, deep water. "You can walk away whenever you want." Agreed. He reached into his coat, and he didn't pull out money. He pulled out a pen, a simple, black plastic pen, the kind you get 100 of in a box. It had a metal clip, just like the one I used on my order pad. "This is just a pen," he said, "until you click the top twice. Then it's a recorder, high sensitivity. Keep it on you. When you see something, write it down. When you hear something, click it." He slid it across the table. It was weighted, heavier than it looked. "And this," he said, placing a small, cheap-looking burner phone on the table. "It has 1 number in it. If you are ever in trouble, if the blue truck comes back." If Trent or anyone else corners you, you press and hold the 9 button. That's it. Someone will come. I picked up the pen. I picked up the phone. They felt cold. He stood up. I'll be in touch. He walked to the door, leaving no money, just the indentation on the vinyl where he'd sat. As he opened the door, a gust of wind blew in, smelling of salt and diesel. He was gone. I looked at the pen in my hand. I clicked it once. The ballpoint emerged. I clicked it again. Nothing happened. I clicked it twice, fast. A tiny pinprick blue light flashed once from the clip, then vanished. I stood up and went to the counter. The cold espresso cup he had left last night was still there. I'd forgotten to wash it. I picked it up, and for a second, I could smell the cold, dark coffee and the sharp, clean scent of the salt wind. The diner became my stage. The pen Ricardo gave me was heavy in my apron pocket, a constant reminder. I was no longer just a waitress. I was a watcher. My world, once confined to wiping tables and balancing trays, now stretched into the shadows of the room. My focus sharpened. I saw the diner not as a room, but as a map of habits. The Wardell security men, the ones who installed the new reel camera, came in every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning. They always wore high-visibility reflective vests. Even though they were just sitting in a booth, they drank their coffee black and fast, paid in cash, and never left a tip. I clicked the pen. I described their faces, their heights, the muddy tread of their boots. Then there was the point-of-sale machine. It wasn't my imagination. It only happened at one table number 12, the big booth in the back corner, the one with the cracked vinyl and the view of the office. It was the table favored by the men in suits, the ones who carried thin leather briefcases stamped with the Solstice Urban Group logo. When they paid, the machine would freeze. The screen would go gray. "Connection error," Trent would mutter, loud enough for them to hear. He'd reboot it, sighing with annoyance. But I watched his hands. He would run the card manually, and in the manual entry screen, the option to add a tip was simply gone. System glitch. He'd apologize. "It's been doing this all week." They'd nod, annoyed but understanding, and they'd leave without tipping, because the machine wouldn't let them. One night, I managed to print the merchant copy of a receipt before Trent cleared the batch. Tucked at the bottom, below the tax line, was a new charge. Service routing fee. It was small, just 3%, but it was on every single electronic transaction. I met Zadie Chow at the donut shop before my next shift. The receipt folded in my palm. I slid it across the Formica table. Zadie's eyes scanned the paper. When she saw the fee, she lit up. But it wasn't a happy light. It was the cold, blue flame of a gas stove. "This is the plumbing," she whispered. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying. "Service routing. This code. It's routing the funds through LumenPay node." "What's that?" I asked. "It's not a what, it's a where, and the where is the Cygnus Isles." "I've never heard of them." "Nobody has," Zadie said, turning the screen to me. It showed a map of the empty ocean. They're a legal fiction, a digital post office box for money. They aren't just skimming tips. Lena, they're laundering the entire diner's transactions. They're washing the money through the Starling. Ricardo found me after my shift. He didn't text. He didn't call. He just emerged from the alley by the bus stop, a shadow detaching itself from the brick. "You're walking wrong," he said. His voice startled me. "What?" "Your route. It's the same every night. You look at your feet. You're behaving like prey." I bristled. "I'm tired, not stupid." "You can be both," he said, not unkindly. "It makes you an easy target. Walk with me." He didn't walk beside me. He fell back. 10, 15 paces. "Look at the shop windows," he called out. His voice was low, but it carried. I looked at the dark glass of the pawn shop. I could see my own reflection, small and tired, and behind me, I could see his, a taller, broader shadow. "I see you," I said. "What else?" I looked harder. Far behind him, a man in a gray hoodie, loitering by a newspaper box. My stomach tightened. There's someone else. He's one of mine, Ricardo said. His name is Salo. He's been following you since you left the diner. He'll be there tomorrow, too. Get used to seeing him. Now, look at the window again. What do you see? Glass, my reflection, you, Salo. Use the periphery. See the reflection of the street corner behind you. You can see Silt Alley before you even get to it. You can see who is waiting. We reached my corner, and he stepped up beside me. From this crack in the pavement to your apartment door, count your steps. Why? If you're running, you need to know how long you're exposed. If you're walking, you need to know if the footsteps behind you are speeding up. Count everything, Lena. They do. This new life was a strange, vibrating wire. I was learning a new language, the language of reflections and counted steps. We stood under the faulty streetlight. I have to know, I said. Are you telling me the truth about everything? He was silent for a long moment, watching the street. I'm telling you what you need to know to stay safe. That's not an answer. I pushed, my voice shaking a little. I can't do this if I'm just another pawn. I won't be lied to. Not by Trent, not by Solstice, not by you. He turned to look at me. His eyes were dark, but they were clear. Then we make a rule. I will not tell you a direct lie, but I will keep my own secrets. That is the best I can offer you. It was a line drawn in the fog, gray and uncertain, but it was a line. Okay, I said, no direct lies. The pressure at the diner escalated. The Hollow Bridge crew, the drunks Ricardo's men had scared off, started coming back, not as customers. I was in the kitchen one night when I smelled it. Acrid smoke. I ran to the back door. The dumpsters in the alley were on fire. Flames high enough to lick the brick. Trent burst out of the office. He didn't grab the fire extinguisher. He grabbed his phone and started recording, his hand shaking. You see this? He yelled, pointing the phone at me and the cook. This is what you started. You and your questions. You're bringing this trouble. They're burning us down. He was performing. I realized he was angling the phone to include the new red light glowing Wardell camera above the door. He was creating evidence, blaming the staff. The next morning, the damage was gone. The alley was clean, the soot scrubbed from the bricks, but the lock on the back door, the one the fire had warped, was gone. In its place was a heavy, bolted steel plate and a new deadbolt. Next to it, a small silver box I didn't recognize. When Trent arrived, he saw it and swore. He touched the new lock. He jiggled the handle. It didn't budge. He poked the silver box. The box let out a low, deep buzz, like an angry hornet. Trent yelped and snatched his hand back. A man in a dark North Key sweater stepped out of the alley's shadows. It wasn't Salo. This one was older. Vibration alarm, the man said calmly. Sensitive. I'd leave it alone. The door is secure. Trent just stared, speechless. Later that day, Trent was in his office, ranting on the phone. I don't know who did it. The lock is just. There in this? He waved a piece of paper. This is a receipt for 1 month of advance maintenance for the diner. Paid in cash. Who is paying my bills? He was caught between two forces, and he was cracking. That night, when I got home, an envelope was on the floor, slid under my door. I opened it. Inside was $118 and a small typed note on thick, cream-colored paper. Counted correctly. I held the money. He had kept his word. The next night, the diner was dead. The rain had returned, slicking the Rookhaven streets just before 9 o'clock. The bell rumbled. He was not from Rookhaven, and he was an older man, with a full head of silver hair, perfectly combed. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. He carried a heavy, dark wooden umbrella, the handle carved like a bird's head. He looked like he had stepped out of a different century. He didn't take a booth. He sat at the counter. Tea, please, he said. His voice was smooth, educated, hot. I brought him the tea. He warmed his hands on the mug. Terrible weather for deliveries, he said, looking out the window. It's the port, sir. It's always delivery weather? Indeed. He took a delicate sip. Tell me, young lady, That large walk-in freezer in the back, does it maintain a steady temperature? We are coordinating food distribution logistics. We're curious about the hardware in these older buildings. How often do you receive your frozen goods? My hand went to my apron pocket. My fingers found the pen. I clicked it twice. Twice a week, I said, my voice even. Tuesdays and Fridays. And the access, I assume it's through that back alley. That's right. Excellent, very helpful. He placed a $10 bill on the counter, far too much for a $2 tea. He stood, pulling on expensive leather gloves. As he reached for his wallet, his suit jacket pulled back. I saw it. Clipped to his belt, almost hidden, was an identification badge. It was white and blue Solstice Urban Group, but below it, attached to the same clip, was a gray magnetic keycard. The lettering was stark. Warehouse 27 North Quay. My blood ran cold. North Key. That was Ricardo's territory. This man was Solstice, but he had access to Ricardo's warehouses. As soon as he was out the door, the wooden umbrella tapping politely on the pavement, I ran to the office. Trent was in the bathroom. I rewound the new high-definition security footage. I zoomed in. I took a picture of the ID badge with my phone. I sent it to Zadie. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from her. Lena, get out. Get out of the diner right now. That is Garrick Snow. He isn't logistics. He's the coordinator. He's the man Solstice sends to clean problems when a lawsuit disappears or a protest leader suddenly moves away. It's him. He makes problems tidy. Get out. My shift wasn't over. I couldn't just leave. I walked back out, my legs unsteady. I finished the night in a daze. I wiped counters that were already clean. I restocked napkins. I saw Garrick Snow's silver hair in every headlight that passed. Finally, it was midnight, closing time. Trent was at the register, cashing out. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key into the drawer. He didn't look at me. He just spoke to the floor, his voice a hoarse whisper. Don't come in tomorrow, Lena. What? Don't. Call in sick. Go to the clinic. Say your grandmother died. I don't care. Just don't come back. I grabbed his arm. Trent, what are you talking about? He ripped his arm away, and for the first time, he looked at me. His eyes were wide, white with a terror I had never seen before. They were here, he breathed. After the old man, the ones in the suits, they know what you're doing. They know you're recording. They know you're counting. He leaned in, his whisper desperate. They've counted to your name. Lena, you're next on the list. Trent's words were a cold stone in my stomach. They've counted to your name. I left the diner, pulling my jacket tight. The rain, which had been a light mist, had turned cold and mean, slashing sideways. The streets were empty. Every headlight was a threat. Every doorway was a shadow waiting to swallow me. I shouldn't have been walking. I should have taken a cab, but I was too rattled to think. My feet just carrying me on the familiar route. I stuck to the main boulevard, away from Silt Alley, just as Ricardo had warned me. The sound of my own footsteps was too loud, echoing off the wet buildings. Then I heard it, the same low, guttural engine. The dark blue pickup. It idled at the cross street ahead of me, blocking the sidewalk. Its lights were off. It was just a black shape in the rain. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't go forward. I looked back. Another car, a dark sedan, had just turned the corner behind me, its headlights bright, pinning me. They were hurting me. My only escape was the narrow opening to my left, the mouth of the alley. Silt Alley. I ran. I plunged into the darkness, the smell of wet garbage and old fish hitting me like a wall. My feet slipped on the broken pavement. It was a canyon of dark brick, the sliver of sky above just a lighter shade of gray. I was halfway down when the blue truck's headlights flooded the alley from the street I'd just left, throwing my shadow long and stark against the far wall. A van, a big, windowless panel van, was parked at the other end, blocking the exit. Its side door slid open with a metallic shriek. Two men stepped out. They were just shapes, bulk and height, dark hoods pulled up, faces lost in shadow. I stopped. trapped. There was nowhere to go. "Just the wallet, sweetheart," one of them said. His voice was rough, trying to sound bored, but it was strung too tight. "And the pen, give us the pen." They knew about the pen. My hand dove into my jacket pocket, fumbling for the burner phone. My fingers were numb, shaking. I found the number 9. I pressed and held, my fingernail digging into the plastic. The phone vibrated once, a weak, short buzz. The screen flashed, connecting, and then went black. No signal. The brick walls were too high. My stomach dropped. But then, something else. From my apron pocket, tucked under my jacket, came a different vibration. It wasn't an electronic buzz. It was a sharp, mechanical thump-thump. Just 2. From the clip of the pen, it wasn't just a recorder. It was a beacon. The 2 men started toward me, walking slowly. "Just make it easy," the first one said. "Get back." The voice didn't come from behind me. It came from the mouth of the alley, from the street I had just fled. The 2 men stopped. I turned my head. Ricardo Neri was standing there, silhouetted against the truck's headlights. The rain slicked his gray wool coat, making it black. His sleeves were dark, soaked. He wasn't breathing hard. He looked perfectly calm, as if he had just stepped out for a cup of coffee. Salo and the older man from the diner's back alley, the one who installed the alarm, stepped out of the shadows to flank him. They didn't speak. They just moved like the wind had been cut, their presence a sudden, cold vacuum in the alley. The 2 hooded men tensed. One of them, the faster one, lunged for me. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in like steel traps. He ripped my wallet from my other hand, my apron, with the pen in the pocket, was still on me. "Get the pen," the first one yelled. "Let her go," Ricardo said. He took 1 step forward. The man holding me laughed. "You're North Key trash. This is Hollow Bridge business. Now get lost." "That's not Hollow Bridge business," Ricardo said. He nodded at the wallet in the man's hand. "That's hers." He looked at the man, his eyes flat and dead in the glare. "Count again." The man holding my wallet hesitated, confused by the words. He opened it, his eyes scanning for cash. "There's nothing here," he sneered. $100. "Look closer." As the man fumbled with the bills, something silver slipped from his own jacket pocket, a money clip. It fell to the wet pavement and popped open. A few folded 20s and a plastic card. An ID card. My eyes snapped to it. Even in the dim light, I saw the cheap lamination. I saw the badly printed eagle, facing the wrong way. The text was blurry Bureau of Metropolitan Order. It was the same as the fake sticker on the wall. A forgery. The man holding me saw me looking. He snarled, his grip tightening. Ricardo moved. It wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. He didn't rush. He took 2 precise steps. The man with the wallet raised his free hand, and Ricardo caught his wrist. I heard a sound, a wet, sickening pop. The man screamed, a high, thin sound that the rain swallowed. His hand went limp. The fingers splayed at an unnatural angle. The wallet and the fake ID he'd scooped up clattered to the ground. The second man, the one holding me, shoved me against the wall and drew a knife. He never got to use it. Salo, the quiet shadow, was on him. It was just as fast. A block, a twist. The knife skittered across the concrete. Salo didn't punch him. He just hit him. Once, a hard, open-palmed strike to the chest that sounded like a side of beef being dropped. The man crumpled. All the air gone from him. It was over in 5 seconds. 2 groaning shapes on the wet ground. No shouting, just precision. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. My back was scraped raw against the brick. Ricardo didn't look at the men on the ground. He was watching the dark end of the alley, where the van was. The van's engine roared to life. The side door slammed shut, and it peeled out, tires screaming. They had left their men. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out. I pointed a shaking finger at the man with the broken wrist. "The card," I gasped, my voice thin. "His ID. It's fake, from the Bureau of Metropolitan Order. The seal is engraved backward, just like the sticker." Ricardo looked at me, a flicker of something, not surprise, approval. He bent down and picked up the ID card, holding it between two fingers. He glanced at it, then at me. He walked over and pulled off his heavy wool coat. It was warm from his body, and it smelled of the sea and cold rain. He wrapped it around my shoulders. It was huge, enveloping me. "They wanted you quiet," he said, his voice low, his eyes still scanning the darkness. "The community hearing is this Friday. They didn't want a witness." He picked up my wallet. He found the burner phone on the ground where I'd dropped it. He checked it, saw the dead screen, and his jaw tightened. He slipped it into his own pocket. Then he gently took the pen from my apron. "Come on," he said, helping me to my feet. "I'm taking you home." We walked out of the alley. Salo and the other man stayed behind. I heard a low, pained groan as we left. The walk to Gleam Row was silent. Ricardo didn't hold my hand. He just walked beside me, a solid, warm presence in the cold. The rain had softened to a mist again. We reached my building. I fumbled for my keys, my hands still shaking. The 3 locks looked flimsy, useless. He waited until I had the door open. I turned in the doorway, the heavy coat still clutched around me. "Are you all right?" he asked. "No," I whispered. He stood there on the landing, the dim hallway light catching the rain in his dark hair. He raised his hand, very slowly, as if not to startle me. He didn't touch my face. His fingers, warm and calloused, just brushed a stray, wet strand of hair from my cheek. "Are you scared?" he asked. I looked into his eyes. They weren't cold now. They were just deep and tired and watching me. "Yes," I said, "but not of you." A small, almost invisible muscle in his jaw relaxed. He nodded. "Once. Lock your door. Salo will be on the street all night. No one will get in." He turned to go. As he did, he reached up to roll his shoulder, a sharp, involuntary movement. His face tightened for just a second. It wasn't from the alley. It was an old pain, a stiffness deep in the muscle, a wound that had healed badly and always remembered the cold. I watched him walk down the stairs, one step at a time, a man who carried his own storms with him. I went inside and locked the 3 locks. I didn't wedge the chair. I didn't need it. I lay down on my bed, still wrapped in his coat, for the first time in months. I slept. It wasn't deep, but it was real. And I dreamed of a dark ocean and a single, steady light from a lighthouse, cutting through the fog, showing the way home. I didn't go back to the diner. I didn't even go back to my apartment. Trent's terror was too real. Salo, the man who had been my shadow, picked me up at the corner in a plain black sedan. He didn't speak. He just drove, his eyes on the mirrors. We drove to the North Quay, to the source of the fog. The building was an old brick warehouse, anonymous, its windows dark. It smelled of the harbor, a deep, cold smell of salt, diesel, and old machinery. "He's waiting," Salo said, and that was all. The training room was on the top floor. It wasn't a gym. Not really. It was a huge open loft with worn wooden floors and a wall of old mirrors, grayed at the edges, floor-to-ceiling windows, streaked with rain, looked out over the entire port. The cranes of the docks were like sleeping iron animals below. Ricardo was there. He wasn't wearing the gray coat. He was in a dark Henley, sleeves pushed to his forearms. The muscles in his arms and shoulders were visible, not bulky, but dense, practical. He looked less like a boss and more like the dock itself. "You did well in the alley," he said. His voice echoed slightly in the big room. "You used your eyes. You identified the threat, but you froze." "They had a van," I said, my voice small. "They were waiting for me." "They'll wait for you again," he said. "They know you're the witness for the hearing. We have to fix the freeze." He wasn't going to teach me to fight. He was going to teach me to stand. He pointed to the center of the room. "You're still shaking. I can see it from here." He was right. A fine tremor had lived in my hands ever since the alley. I couldn't make it stop. "The fear is stuck," he said. You're still in the alley. You need to breathe it out." He didn't come at me from the front. He moved until he was standing behind me. I tensed, my shoulders hitching up toward my ears. I could feel his presence, the heat from his body, even though he wasn't touching me. "Breathe," he said, his voice low, right behind my ear. "Count of 4, in." I inhaled, a shaky, shallow breath. "Hold, 4." I held it, my lungs aching. "Out, 4." I exhaled in a rush. "Again," he commanded. "Slower. I want to hear the air move. In, 1, 2, 3, 4. I breathed in, the sound too loud in the quiet room. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. I felt the pressure build. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4. My shoulders were still locked up, tight against my neck. "You're holding the tension," he said. Then he moved. His hands settled on my shoulders. They were large and calloused and incredibly warm. The weight of them was startling. Not heavy, but grounding. It wasn't a threat. It was an anchor. The warmth soaked through my thin sweater, and I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. "Let them drop," he murmured. He didn't massage. He just pressed down gently, firmly, guiding my shoulders into their proper place. The tremor in my hands slowed. We were standing in front of the wall of mirrors. "Look," he said. I opened my eyes. I saw us reflected in the old spotted glass, me pale and small, my hair a mess from the rain, and behind me, him, solid, dark, his large hands resting on my shoulders, his chin just above my head. We looked like a photograph of a secret. Our eyes met in the reflection. "You're afraid of your own heartbeat," he said, his voice a low rumble that I felt through his hands. I stared at our image. The woman in the mirror looked terrified, but she also looked protected. "No," I whispered, my voice surprising me. "I'm just afraid of not hearing it anymore." His gaze held mine in the glass. His hands tightened on my shoulders for just a second. A song started playing from an old radio on a workbench in the corner. It was a slow, smoky ballad, the kind of song that only plays late at night when the rain is hitting the windows. He dropped his hands. The loss of his warmth was immediate, a sudden cold. He stepped back, putting that professional distance between us again, but the air in the room had changed. It was charged. "They'll grab you again," he said, his voice flat, all business. "Solstice, Hollow Bridge, they're clumsy. They grab. You need to know how to move with the pull, not against it. Use their momentum to find your escape." He held out a hand. "I need to show you the footwork." My heart did a slow, heavy thump. "You're asking me to dance. Ricardo." "I'm asking you to learn," he said, but his eyes were not all business anymore. It was a ridiculous excuse, a transparent, beautiful excuse. I placed my hand in his. He drew me to the center of the wooden floor. He didn't pull me close, not at first. His right hand settled on the small of my back. Fingers spread wide. It was a gesture of support, of guidance. It wasn't rushed. His other hand held mine. I put my free hand on his shoulder, but it felt stiff, wrong, hesitantly. I moved it. I placed my open palm flat on his chest, over his heart. I felt it. Under my hand, his heartbeat, a slow, steady, powerful rhythm. It was as solid as the foundation of the key. It was the calmest thing I had ever felt. I breathed in. He didn't smell like a gangster. He smelled of sea air and clean, simple soap, and something like old leather and wood. He smelled safe. We began to move, just a slow shuffle on the worn floor. It wasn't a dance. It was just two people, standing close, moving to the sound of the rain and a ghost on the radio. "You're leading," I whispered. "No," he murmured, his voice against my hair. "I'm just giving you the frame. You're deciding where to step." His thumb moved, just once, a small, reassuring circle on my hip. A jolt went through me, warm and sharp. My entire nervous system lit up. I looked up at him. His eyes were not on the room, checking for threats. They were on my face. They were on my mouth. He stopped moving. I stopped moving. The music played on. He was answering the question that had been in the air since he first walked into that diner. He lowered his head, slowly, giving me every chance in the world to pull away, to turn my head, to say no. His lips touched mine. It was gentle, a soft, warm pressure. And then he paused. He stayed right there, a breath away, his eyes closed. He was giving me the choice. He was letting me set the count. I didn't pull away. I rose up on my toes, just slightly. I leaned in. Closing that last millimeter of doubt, I accepted My hand on his chest clenched, grabbing his shirt. My other arm slid from his shoulder to wrap around his neck. His hand on my back held me steady, pulling me closer. His other hand came up, not to grab, but to cradle. His fingers tangled in my hair, his thumb brushing my cheekbone as he tilted my head. It was a kiss of confirmation. It was slow and deep and sure. It wasn't the frantic, desperate kiss of a movie. It was the kiss of two people who had seen the darkness and were, for a second, choosing to make a small light. My spine, which had been rigid with fear for days, finally relaxed. We broke apart, but only slightly. Our foreheads rested together. I was smiling. I realized I could feel the curve of my own lips. He was too... A small, faint smile that reached his eyes, making them less dark. I could feel his warm breath on my cheek. He didn't try for more. He stopped, holding the boundary he had just drawn. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his gaze heavy. His voice was a whisper, rougher now, changed. When you say yes, Lena, everything, it will be yours, and it will be at your pace. He swallowed. I don't take, not from you. I just nodded. I didn't have any words. I rested my head against his chest, listening to that steady, solid heartbeat, matching my own breathing to it. We stood like that, holding each other. Long after the song had faded into static, the only sound was the rain, drumming on the tin roof. We were holding the desire at bay, and there was a promise in it. A sharp, sudden knock hammered on the heavy steel door. We sprang apart, but not guiltily, just alerted in an instant. Ricardo's face went flat again. The boss was back. The lover was gone. Enter, he called. The door burst open. Zadie Chow stood there, dripping, her messenger bag leaking water onto the floor. Her hair was plastered to her head. Sorry, she panted, holding up a waterlogged file. I had to come. I have it. It's hot. Ricardo was already moving toward her. What is it? Zadie looked past him, at me. Her eyes were wide. They're not just threatening you. Lena, they're shutting you down. For good. I got the internal memo from my source at the Harbor Line Authority. Tomorrow night, they've scheduled a critical health and safety inspection for the diner. They're going to use a fake order to seal the building. Zadie spread her files across the warehouse floor, the rain drumming a frantic rhythm on the roof above us. The moment of softness with Ricardo was gone, replaced by the cold, hard lines of a conspiracy. It's not just the service routing fee anymore, Zadie said, her finger tracing a line on a bank statement. They're burying it. Look, a variable energy surcharge, a hygiene systems maintenance fee, all billed to the diner, all paid out to a single entity. She tapped the name at the top of the transfer slip, Guild Harbor Trust. It's another shell, Ricardo said. He was standing by the window, staring down at the port, his reflection a dark ghost in the glass. They're moving the money faster now. They're moving it because they're about to close the account, Zadie said. Sealing the diner isn't just about silencing Lena. It's about destroying the paper trail. They'll claim the fire, the bad wiring, destroyed the records. They're not clumsy, Ricardo said, more to himself than to us. They're thorough. So what's the plan? I asked, my voice high. Do we, I don't know, stop the inspector from getting in? Do your men? No. Ricardo cut me off. Turning from the window, the coldness was back in his eyes. We do this my way. They want to use their rules. We'll use them, too. We just use them better. He looked at Zadie. The North Key Community Listening Council, the one the city was forced to create after the 17 winter floods. When is their next session? Zadie's eyes widened. Tomorrow, noon. It's the one Solstice has been trying to cancel. It's just a listening session. Ricardo, it has no legal power. It's a venting machine for the neighborhood. It's a stage, he said, and it's public. Solstice can't shut it down without starting a riot. We're not going to stop the inspection. We're going to put the inspectors on trial. In public, we're going to count correctly, right on their stage. He looked at me. You're the witness. Lena, you'll bring the pen. You'll bring the fake ID. You'll bring your memory. My blood ran cold. Go public after what happened in the alley. Garrick Snow. He'll be there. He will, Ricardo said, and he'll be trapped. He can't send his thugs into a room full of city councilors and news cameras. Cameras, Zadie asked, a predatory gleam in her eye. You, Ricardo said, pointing at her. You'll be concerned local press. You'll be live streaming to your blog. Make sure everyone knows where to find the feed. I took a deep breath, the air tasting of metal and rain. Okay, I'll do it, but my condition still stands. Your men, North Key, they stay out of it. They can be there, but they sit in the back. No threats, no. Dismantling, just me and the facts. Ricardo stared at me, his gaze heavy. I could see the internal war. He wanted to protect me, and to do that, he needed to control the room. My condition took that control away from him. You'll be alone up there, he said, his voice low. I won't be, I said, glancing at Zadie, and I have to do this my way, or I'm just trading one boss for another. His jaw tightened. He held my gaze for a long 5 seconds, and I didn't look away. Finally, he gave a single sharp nod. Agreed, my men will be in the back. They will not interfere. But his eyes were heavy with a worry that chilled me more than the alley had. The community hall was a converted church basement, smelling of old coffee, damp drywall, and civic dread. It was packed. The whole neighborhood was here. Fishermen in their work coats, old women from Gleam Row, a few dock workers, and a solid, unmoving block of men in expensive suits from Meridian and Crow, Solstice's law firm. In the front row, looking perfectly calm, sat Garrick Snow. His silver hair was impeccable. His wooden-handled umbrella rested against his knee. Zadie was in the side aisle, her laptop open, a small camera mounted on a tripod, its red RX light glowing. Ricardo, Salo, and 2 other North Key men were just shadows, standing against the back wall, their arms crossed. They were keeping their promise. They were just watching. The council chairperson, a tired woman named Mrs. Alvarez, called the meeting to order. We will now hear testimony regarding the proposed redevelopment and its impact on small businesses. Before anyone else could speak, a lawyer from Meridian and Crow stood up. Madam Chair, before we waste time on anecdotal complaints, Meridian and Crow, on behalf of our client, Solstice Urban Group, and in the interest of public safety, must present formal evidence that the business in question, the Starling Diner, is in fact a public nuisance. He signaled, and Garrick Snow himself stood. He walked to the podium, his steps measured and silent. Good afternoon, Snow said, his voice smooth and amplified by the microphone. We are not here to discuss feelings. We are here to discuss facts. We have compiled evidence, submitted by the Bureau of Metropolitan Order, that the Starling Diner has been engaged in a pattern of fraudulent business practices. He held up a folder. We have here certified reports from the last 30 days. Violations for weights and measures. They're watering the milk. They're using subgrade meat. They are, in short, cheating the very community they claim to serve. The room murmured. I saw some of the locals look confused, betrayed. And now, Snow continued, his voice full of false sympathy. We have a report filed just this morning. A severe electrical fire risk. This diner is not a victim. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a hazard, and we are formally requesting the city seal the premises, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. The lawyers nodded. The trap was sprung. They had defined the narrative. I was no longer a victim. I was an employee at a Cheats restaurant. Mrs. Alvarez, I said. My voice was too small. I cleared my throat and stepped into the aisle. Madam Chair. All eyes turned to me. Garrick Snow smiled, a thin, cold smile. My name is Lena Mirek. I'm a waitress at the Starling Diner, and Mr. Snow is lying. A gasp went through the room. The lawyers from Meridian and Crow started to stand, shouting, "Objection and slander." "It's a community meeting, gentlemen." "Mrs." Alvarez said, her voice sharp. "She has the floor. Sit down." I walked to the podium, my hands shaking. I laid the pen on the wooden surface. Then I pulled the fake Backward Eagle ID card from my pocket and held it up. "Mr. Snow is right about one thing," I said, my voice gaining strength. "This is about facts. The fact is, the inspectors from the Bureau of Metropolitan Order who filed these reports are fake. This is the ID card one of them dropped when he and his partner pulled me into Silt Alley 2 nights ago." The room went silent. I saw Ricardo lean forward just an inch from the back wall. "I am not a cheat," I said. "I'm the one being cheated. We all are." I turned to the crowd. "For months, the diner has been stealing our tips. Not Trent, the manager, the system. A corporate policy from Solstice Urban Group." I explained it. The POS machine. The connection errors that only happened on large electronic tip tables. The system-pooled fund that left me with $4 for an 8-hour night. Garrick Snow's lawyer stood. "Madam Chair, this is absurd. This child is spinning a fantasy to cover for her own incompetence. She has no proof. This is hearsay." "On the contrary," Zadie's voice boomed from the side. The wall behind the council, which had been blank, suddenly lit up. Zadie's projector was on, and on the wall was a diagram, a flow chart. It started with a box labeled Starling Diner POS. An arrow pointed to service routing fee, which pointed to LumenPay node, which pointed to Cygnus aisles. "This is the money trail," Zadie said, walking forward using a laser pointer. "And this is the new one." She clicked. A new chart appeared. Hygiene fees, energy surcharges, all flowing from the diner's operating account directly to this. The laser pointer settled on a name in a big red box. Guild Harbor Trust. "And who controls Guild Harbor Trust?" Zadie asked, her voice ringing. "Why, a quick search of the public registry shows it's a holding company managed by..." She clicked again. The name appeared, Solstice Urban Group. The room exploded. People were standing, shouting. Garrick Snow didn't flinch. He just held up his hand. "Madam Chair, this is slanderous. It proves nothing. The only certified fact in this room is the health risk. The diner must be sealed, now before anyone else gets hurt." "He's right," the lawyer yelled. "This is a distraction. Seal the building." They were pushing. They knew if the building was sealed, the evidence, the physical safe, the paper ledgers Trent kept would be gone forever. "No," I shouted. "Don't seal it." "It's the only way, young lady, for public safety," Snow said. "Then count it," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. Snow paused. "What?" "Count it. Right here. You say we're cheating. I say you're stealing. The proof is in the diner, in the safe. Let's go over there. Right now. The whole neighborhood. And let's open the safe in front of everyone. Let's count it at the table." Garrick Snow's smile faltered. He looked at his lawyers. This wasn't in their script. "That is highly irregular," the lawyer stammered. "It's public testimony," a fisherman yelled from the back. "Let's count." The room took up the chant, "Count it, count it, count it." "Madam Chair," I said, looking at Mrs. Alvarez, "they want to seal the evidence. I'm asking you to make it public. Let the people see." "Mrs. Alvarez looked at the angry crowd. She looked at the panicked lawyers. She looked at me. "This council agrees," she said. "We will recess and reconvene at the Starling Diner. In 15 minutes, everyone, we're going to count." I turned to find Trent. He was by the door, trying to slip out. He was pale green, sweating through his cheap polo shirt. Trent, I said. He flinched, holding his hands up. Lena, I can't. They'll ruin me. Look. He pulled his employment contract from his pocket. It was crumpled, damp. He pointed to a clause, disclosure penalty, if I reveal any proprietary, internal administrative procedure. They can sue me for $50,000. They'll take my house. They're taking the whole neighborhood. Trent, I said, my voice low. They're just starting with you. The walk to the diner was a parade. The entire basement, it seemed, followed. Zadie was live streaming, her camera on her shoulder. Ricardo and his men were a silent wall at the back of the crowd, watching. We stood in the diner. It was cramped, hot, and smelled of fear. The safe, Mr. Barlow, Mrs., Alvarez ordered. Trent, his hands shaking so violently he could barely work the dial, spun the combination. He pulled the heavy steel door open. The nightly ledger, I said. Show them the ledger from the night Ricardo, from the night I got my money back. Trent pulled out the thick black book. He opened it. And now, I said, the internal transfer log on the computer. Zadie pushed her way to the POS. Let me. Her fingers flew. She brought up the admin screen, the transfer log. Look, I said, pointing. Here, in the book, internal administrative fee, $114. I turned to the screen. And here, on the computer, automated transfer to LumenPay node, $114. They matched exactly. The diner was dead silent for 1 second. Then someone in the back, one of the dock workers, just said, thieves. The room erupted. It was a roar. People were shouting, pointing at Garrick Snow. He stood by the pie case, his face white, his mask of calm finally completely gone. This proves nothing, his lawyer shrieked. This is just bookkeeping. This meeting is suspended, Mrs., Alvarez yelled over the noise. This is now an official city inquiry. She looked at Snow, her eyes like chips of ice. I'm postponing this decision. For 24 hours, this building and its contents are now evidence. No one, not Solstice, not the Bureau, no one touches anything. She turned to the crowd. Go home. The council will secure the diner. The crowd slowly, angrily dispersed. Garrick Snow and his team were gone, vanished in the chaos. I stood there, shaking, breathing in the smell of old coffee. Zadie touched my arm. We won. We won the battle, Lena. I looked at the safe, standing open. I looked at the dark windows of the diner. But the war isn't over, I whispered. The decision is in 24 hours. Ricardo stepped out of the shadows by the door. His face was grim. No, he said, his voice low and heavy. The decision is tonight. They showed their hand. Now they have to wipe the board. And tonight, Lena, they won't be counting. They'll be subtracting. The victory in the hall was cold. It was just a pause. The marshals posted at the diner doors were a flimsy shield, and we all knew it. We retreated to the warehouse loft, the rain starting again, the port lights smearing against the glass. Zadie's phone buzzed. She looked at it, her face pale in the screen's glow. My source. It's done. Solstice just filed an emergency injunction citing the compromised evidence and the fire risk Snow mentioned. They're not waiting for the 24 hours. They're sending a city-certified electrical team at dawn, 6 in the morning. An electrical team, Ricardo said. It wasn't a question. To start an electrical fire. A small one, Zadie confirmed, reading. Just enough to scorch the safe, fry the POS terminal. They'll call it a tragic accident. The marshals will confirm it. The evidence is destroyed, the diner is sealed, and the case is closed. So we defend it, I said, my voice shaking. We barricade the door. No, Ricardo said. He was looking past me, at the open room, his mind working. They want to burn the evidence. They want to find a compromised safe. He turned to Salo. We'll give them one. The plan was a soft heist, played in reverse. We weren't breaking in. We were setting a new stage. The marshals were reassigned to a priority call at 4 in the morning. Leaving the diner dark and unguarded, Salo and the North Key crew moved in. They didn't touch the real safe. They wheeled in a decoy, a near-perfect match, Rusted and heavy, they placed it exactly where the real one had been. "This one is hollow," Salo explained, his voice low as he worked. He installed a small, pressure-sensitive plate under the dial. The second they touch this, it starts a clock, and it triggers a log. "Meanwhile," Ricardo said, "the real evidence. Trent's ledger, the POS backups. Go somewhere safe." "I know where," I said. "Trent was terrified of the system crashing. He kept paper copies of everything. He stored them in the walk-in freezer, inside an old, dead produce cooler. It was all there, a meticulous, paranoid record of every single transaction, every single administrative fee that Solstice had stolen." Ricardo pointed to the ancient, unplugged soda vending machine in the corner, the one with the faded 90-cent logos. "Put it there. All of it. Salo, link the decoy safe's trigger to the magnetic lock on this machine's door." Zadie saw it instantly, so when Snow touches the fake safe, it unlocks the real one, Ricardo finished. "Zadie, you'll be on the roof across the street. The second that lock clicks, your camera is live. You stream the contents of that vending machine to the world." At 5:30, the crew was gone. It was just me and Ricardo, standing in the dark, cold diner. The air was thick with the smell of old coffee and ozone. "What's my part?" I asked. "You are the most important part," he said. "You are the normal one, the alibi." He stood close, but didn't touch me. I could feel the heat radiating from him in the cold room. "In 10 minutes, you will walk in the front door. The city cameras on the street will see you. You will unlock the door. You will turn on the main lights. You will start the coffee pot. You will be Lena Mirek, waitress, starting her shift, unaware of any danger. You will make this entire scene look real." I nodded, my throat dry. He stepped back into the deep shadows of the walk-in freezer. "I'll be here, but I won't move unless I have to." He paused. "Lena, there's a plan B." "Plan B? Snow's men are clumsy, but if they're smart, they'll bring backup. They'll send the Hollow Bridge crew to start a riot, to make the accident look like vandalism." My blood chilled. "What do we do?" "Nothing," he said, and his voice was cold steel. "We don't fight, we stall. The moment Snow touches that dial, it starts an upload. Everything Trent's ledgers, Zadie's flowcharts, the LumenPay data, it all starts uploading to the Rookhaven Public Image Repository. It's a community site. They can't take it down." He checked his watch. "But the server is slow. It takes exactly 11 minutes for the full packet to post. If Hollow Bridge comes, our only job, is to buy 11 minutes. Argue, yell, spill coffee, whatever it takes. Do not let them stop the clock." I left. I walked around the block. At 5:59, I walked to the front door, my keys shaking in my hand. I unlocked it. I stepped inside. "Ricardo," I whispered. Silence. He was gone. I turned on the lights. The diner flickered to life. I went behind the counter. I scooped coffee into the filter. I was just a waitress. At 6:02, a white van from the Rookhaven Electrical Authority pulled up. Garrick Snow stepped out, flanked by 2 men. He was wearing a city-issued hard hat and a reflective vest. He looked like a wolf in a sheep's costume. The bell on the door rumbled. "Ma'am," Snow said, his voice crisp, "we're here on an emergency order. We have to inspect the premises for a severe electrical fault." My heart was a fist in my chest. "Inspect now? I'm just opening. I don't know anything about this." "That's why we're here," Snow said, pushing past me. His men made a straight line for the decoy safe. "We need to access the main service panel." "That's not a service panel," I said, my voice high. "That's the diner safe. You can't just—" "Public safety trumps privacy, young lady," Snow said. He looked at the decoy. He put his gloved hand on the dial. Click. A low, mechanical thump echoed from the corner, the soda machine. Across the street, a small red light blinked on in a dark window. Zadie was live. "You can't do this," I said, stepping in front of Snow. I demand to see a warrant." Snow's politeness was gone. Get out of the way, girl! His men opened their toolboxes. They were filled with pry bars and drills. You're not electricians, I whispered, the realization hitting me. You're very smart, Snow sneered. Now move! He was about to shove me aside when the front door burst open, smashing against the wall. It was Hollow Bridge, 6 of them, led by the same drunk from the first night. They were amped up, carrying pipes. What the hell is this? The leader yelled, looking at Snow. We were supposed to meet you here. You said make it messy. Garrick Snow's face went white. He had been betrayed by his own clumsy tools. You idiots, I am conducting an official my ass, the drunk yelled. You're the suit who paid us to start the fire. You're cutting us out. This is a setup, Snow hissed, realizing what was happening. Get him, the Hollow Bridge leader roared, and the diner exploded into chaos. Snow's fake electricians drew batons. Hollow Bridge swung their pipes. They were going to kill each other and destroy everything. Stop! Ricardo Neri stepped out of the walk-in freezer. He didn't shout. The word just cut through the noise, cold and absolute. He held his hands up, palms open, showing he was unarmed. Every single person froze. Neri, the Hollow Bridge leader spat, his pipe lowering. This ain't your turf. This is our payday. It is my turf, Ricardo said, walking calmly to the center of the room. And he pointed at Snow, is robbing you. He looked at the Hollow Bridge leader. How much did he pay you to burn this place down? 10,000. None of your business. It's my business when he's stealing from my neighborhood, Ricardo said. I've counted. Solstice is pulling over 50,000 a week from this district. They're skinning this entire key, and they're paying you with scraps from your own table. The leader hesitated, his eyes darting between Ricardo and the panicked, silent Snow. He's lying, Snow shouted. He can't prove that. Do the job. He doesn't have to prove it, Zadie yelled. She was at the front door, her camera on her shoulder, its red light blazing. She was pointing at the old soda machine. The front panel of the machine was wide open, and inside, stacked neatly, lit by Zadie's camera light, were Trent's ledgers. It's all right here, Zadie shouted, her voice booming. Every receipt, every fake fee, every dollar they stole, and it's live streaming to the whole city. Snow was trapped. The Hollow Bridge crew looked at the ledgers, then at Snow. He's right, the leader said, his voice a low growl. He's actually counting. 11 minutes, Ricardo said, his voice soft. As if summoned, the world outside the window lit up. The massive digital billboard across the street, the one that sold beer, flickered and went black. A second later, white text appeared. Guild Harbor Trust, the Missing Tip Fund, Nightly Theft, Starling Diner, $114. Nightly Theft Anchor Bar, $210. Nightly Theft, Quay Street Bait, $95. The list scrolled on. The upload was complete. On the street below, the pre-dawn commuters were stopping, their cars pulling over. People pointed. The sound was faint at first. Then it grew. The chant from the meeting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Garrick Snow, his face a mask of ruin, lunged for the door. In his panic, he smashed the glass on the fire alarm. Whee! The alarm shrieked, filling the diner with a pulsing, deafening sound. But the crowd outside didn't run. They turned. They moved toward the diner. They raised their phones. The diner, lit by the frantic, pulsing strobe of the alarm, was suddenly illuminated by 100 tiny, powerful beams of light. The flashlights cut through the dark, chaotic room. They lit up the open vending machine, full of paper. They lit up the decoy safe. They lit up the faces of the Hollow Bridge crew, their pipes lowered. They lit up Ricardo Neri, standing calm at the center, and they lit me up, standing behind the counter, my hands flat on the wood. The crowd wasn't afraid. They were counting. Louder and louder, they were illuminating the truth, turning our counter into an altar. The shriek of the fire alarm died, leaving a ringing silence. The crowd, illuminated by the dawn, was a low, murmuring sea of phone screens and flashlights. They had seen it all: the ledgers, the panic, the truth. Solstice's fake electricians were gone, swallowed by the crowd. The Hollow Bridge crew had simply vanished, melting back into the alleys, their loyalties fractured. But the fight wasn't over. As the first real city police car, sirens finally on, rolled to the curb, two men in cheap suits stepped through the throng. They weren't cops. They were the ones who had served Trent his warning. They were the paper pushers for the Bureau of Metropolitan Order. They ignored Ricardo. They walked straight to me, still standing behind the counter. "Lena Mirek," the first one said, his voice flat. He held out a folded summons. "You are hereby served for willful obstruction of a city-certified inspection and tampering with a secured premises." I stared at the paper. They had lost. They had been exposed, live, to the entire city. And they were still coming for me. They were using their last, flimsy, backward eagle-stamped piece of paper. Ricardo was at my side in a second. He didn't touch them. He just stepped between us. "She'll accept it," he said, taking the paper himself. "Now leave my diner." The men looked at Ricardo, then at the 100 phone cameras still pointed at them. They turned and disappeared. "He's right," Ricardo said, his voice low and urgent. He was already pulling me toward the back door. "They're still counting, just on a different page. We're leaving." Salo had a car running in the clean-swept back alley. We got in. The city was waking up. People were going to work, looking at the billboard, which was still scrolling its list of stolen tips. "You need to disappear, Lena," Ricardo said as the car moved smoothly toward the port. "Just for a few weeks. I have a place. Up the coast. No one will find you. Let the lawyers handle this." I looked out the window. We passed the community hall. We passed the pawn shop. I saw the city as a map of places I was supposed to run from. "No," I said. He turned to look at me, his face grim. "And they've been chasing me my whole life," I said, "from my apartment, from my job. Now they're chasing me from my city. I'm not running from this place." Ricardo stared at me. I saw the pride in his eyes, but I also saw the deep, aching fear, the fear of a man who knew exactly what they were capable of. He had wanted me safe. I had just refused. He nodded once. "Then we don't run." We went back to the loft. The rain had stopped, and the morning sun was trying to burn through the fog. The wide wooden floor was cold under my feet. It was quiet. Just the distant cry of gulls and the low rumble of the port. I still had the summons in my hand. My fingers were smudged with ink and the faint, chemical smell of the thermal receipt paper from the diner. I looked at Ricardo. He was washing his hands at a deep utility sink in the corner, scrubbing with a bar of cheap, harsh soap, the smell of it, and the faint tang of metal, cut through the salt air. We were marked by it, the paper and the steel. "You don't understand why I won't run," I said, not to him, but to the room, to the view of the harbor. He dried his hands on a rough towel, watching me. "I grew up in Prospect Hollow," I said, my voice quiet. "Up on the ridge, where the factories used to be. My mother was a seamstress. She worked piecework, and she worked overtime, every Saturday, for a year. She was saving for a deposit on a better apartment, to get us out of the damp. I looked at my hands. At the end of the year, they told her she was short, that she had miscalculated. The manager showed her the book. The numbers don't lie, he told her. He'd been recalculating her overtime, rounding it down, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. It was just gone. They had counted her life for her, and they had counted it wrong. I finally looked at him. She never recovered. She never trusted the count again. She stopped saving. She just stopped. I held up the summons. I hate it. I hate letting them be the only ones with the pen. I hate letting them count my life. Ricardo's face was still. He walked over. Not to me, but to the window. He leaned his shoulder against the brick, watching a massive container ship being guided in by 2 tugboats. "When I was 14, he said, his voice a low rumble. "My old man was gone. I was at the docks, warehouse 7. I held the ledger, the real one." He looked at his own calloused hands. "My job was to count. I counted the crates coming off the ships. I counted the cash that went into the bag, and I counted the men who went out on the boats, and the ones who didn't come back." He turned from the window to look at me. "Counting was survival. You count right, you live. You count right. The families on your dock get fed. You count wrong. People disappear. It kept me alive, but it makes you alone. You're just the man with the book. You're just the numbers." He stepped toward me, closing the small, cold space between us. You're the first person I've met who wants to count with me, not for me or against me." He was so close I could feel the warmth from his chest. He reached up, his hand brushing my cheek, the same calloused fingers that had counted ships and missing men. "I asked you to borrow your eyes," he whispered. "I didn't know they'd be this strong." This time, I was the one who moved first. I put my hand on his chest, flat, over his heart. I felt the steady, solid beat, and I kissed him. It was firmer than before. It was longer. It was the answer to all the fear, all the backstories. It was the kiss of 2 people who understood what it meant to have your life miscounted. My fingers curled into his shirt. His other hand came up, cradling the back of my head, holding me. Not just pulling me in, but holding me. He broke the kiss, but only to rest his forehead against mine. His eyes were closed. I could feel his breath, warm and steady. "If you stay," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion he never showed, "I'll learn to count slowly, with you." I pulled back, just enough to see his eyes. They were dark, but they weren't cold. They were full of the thing he was offering. "Ricardo," I said, my voice shaking but firm, I'm not one of your warehouses. I'm not something you protect by locking it up." "I know," he said. If this is real," I said, "it has to be my choice. Always. No force. No possession. Every time. Every step. It's because I nod. Because I say yes." He didn't hesitate. He looked at me as if I had just handed him the real ledger, the one that made sense of everything. "I choose your way, Lena," he said. "I choose your count." A small, quiet laugh escaped me. It was a sound I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. Just as I did, the deep, mournful horn of the container ship sounded from the harbor, echoing across the water. He smiled, a real smile, and pulled me into an embrace, not a desperate one, but a solid one. My head rested on his chest, my hand over his heart. We just stood there, breathing in time. Listening to the port wake up, we stopped, right there, on the safe and solid ground we had just built. The ringing of a phone split the air. It wasn't my burner. It was his, on the workbench. He didn't let me go, just reached over and hit the speaker. "Zadie." "It's done," Zadie's voice crackled, fast and triumphant. "The billboard, the stream, it worked. The city is in an uproar. Mrs. Alvarez just convened an emergency open vote session. Noon, today. She's declared all the evidence, the ledgers, the stream, the fake IDs as valid public testimony. Solstice is trying to file an injunction, but they're too late." Ricardo looked down at me, his eyes sharp. "It's time," he said, his voice low. "It's time to let the city count." We moved toward the door. I grabbed my jacket. Ricardo picked something up from the bench. He stopped me at the door. "Wait!" He held out his hand. In his palm was his watch, the simple brush steel tool that had been on his wrist since the moment I met him. "The police," he said. "They're going to take my testimony. They're going to take me in for questions. I won't be at the vote." My heart stopped. "Don't," he said, seeing my face. "It's part of the count. My part. But you need to be there. You need to be the one who finishes." He took my hand and, turning my wrist over, he fastened the watch. The metal was heavy and still warm from his skin. "Borrow this," he said, his fingers closing over mine, "so you know your own time." The street was the new city hall, Mrs. Alvarez had moved the entire hearing right onto the wet pavement in front of the Starling Diner. It was noon. The entire neighborhood was there, a solid, unmoving mass of faces. They had come from the docks, from the apartments in Gleam Row, from the bait shops. This was their count. Zadie was on the roof of the pawn shop across the street, her camera feeding a live signal to the massive billboard, which was still scrolling the list of stolen funds on a folding table set up on the sidewalk for all the world to see. Was the evidence the scorched decoy safe, the real ledgers from the soda machine, and the LumenPay bank statements taped to the diner's front window. Garrick Snow arrived, flanked by 2 lawyers from Meridian and Crow. Looked like a ghost. His silver hair was damp. His tailored suit was rumpled, but his eyes were reptilian, bright with one last strike. "Madam Chair," he shouted, his voice cracking. "This is a circus, a mob. You are being manipulated by a known criminal." He pointed, not at me, but into the crowd. "I have final evidence, video evidence that proves this entire morning was a theatrical setup." One of the lawyers opened a laptop. This footage was captured at 5:50 a.m. by our legal security team, monitoring our assets. The screen showed the dark diner. It showed Ricardo. It showed him and Salo placing the decoy safe. It showed them wiring the soda machine. "You see," Snow shrieked, his voice triumphant, "he tampered with the scene. He planted this evidence. This entire discovery was a fraud, orchestrated by the boss of the North Key docks." The crowd murmured, their certainty wavering. They looked from the screen to the back of the crowd, searching. Ricardo Neri stepped forward. The sea of people parted for him. A silent, respectful wave. He walked to the table, to the microphone, his face perfectly, terribly calm. He looked at the footage on the laptop. "I don't deny it, Mo," he said, his voice, amplified by the speakers, rolled over the street. "I was here." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Snow smiled, a death's head grin. "I moved the evidence." Ricardo continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "Because Mr. Snow and his fake electrical team were on their way to burn it. We didn't change the facts. We just put them in a stronger box." He turned from the screen to Mrs. Alvarez, his gaze unblinking. "You want to count, but let's count in the right order." He held up one finger, the one with the callus. 1. Where does the money start with the tips? Lena's tips. $4 when she was owed $118. He held up a second. 2. Where is the cut, the internal administrative fee in Trent's ledger? A third. 3. Where does the money go? The LumenPay account, the Guild Harbor Trust. And a fourth. 4. Who gets Rich Solstice Urban Group? He turned, his voice amplified, to the shadows by the alley. "And he invited Hollow Bridge to the party, but he only paid them scraps. I invite them to confirm. How much did Solstice really short you?" From the alley, a low, angry growl of assent. They were here, and they were listening. "It's true." A new voice, thin and reedy. Trent Barlow. He pushed his way through the crowd, his face pale green, but his eyes were, for the first time, clear. He was holding his crumpled, tear-stained employment contract. "It's all true. They made me," he said, his voice breaking over the microphone. "They had a penalty clause, $50,000. They were going to take my house." He laid the contract on the table. The final, pathetic piece of evidence. He turned to me, and the tears came. "Lena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have counted right." Before Mrs. Alvarez could respond, the 2 fake Bureau of Metropolitan Order agents shoved their way to the front. "This meeting is illegal," one of them shouted, waving a piece of paper. "We have a municipal order to disperse this crowd and secure this." "Check their IDs," I yelled. My voice was loud, ringing out, amplified by Zadie's microphone. The men froze. "Check their identification," I demanded. The crowd surged. "Count 'em!" a fisherman yelled. Check the count! The crowd took up the new chant. Countdown, countdown, countdown. One of the agents, panicked, fumbled for his wallet. He held up his badge, trying to project authority. A dozen phone cameras zoomed in. Zadie's feed filled the billboard with a high-definition, 10-foot-tall image of the badge. "The eagle," someone shouted from the crowd. "It's facing the wrong way." "The serial number," another voice cried out. "It's the same as the one from the alley. It's a fake." The two men tried to run. They didn't get far. The crowd didn't touch them. It simply surrounded them. A silent, unmoving wall of citizens. "Mrs." Alvarez stood up, her face a mask of cold fury. "The temporary seal on the Starling Diner," she declared, her voice booming, "is hereby lifted." The street roared. "The diner is open," she continued, "and this council is immediately forming the North Key Integrity Commission to investigate every single administrative fee billed to this neighborhood for the last 5 years. Garrick Snow was trying to escape. His lawyers already vanished into the throng. He was just a man in a ruined suit. His power evaporated." Ricardo's voice stopped him. It was low, but it cut through the celebration. "Snow." The man froze, his back to us. "Count the people on your side." Garrick Snow stood alone in a perfect circle of silence. He didn't turn around. He just folded. He walked away, defeated, the crowd parting, not in fear but in disgust. The roar of the crowd was deafening. It was the sound of a city breathing again. I looked at Ricardo. He was standing by the table of evidence, watching the people he protected take their power back. He had done it. He had stepped out of the shadows. And he had won. He met my gaze. I pushed through the cheering crowd, my feet light, my heart pounding a new, steady rhythm. I didn't stop until I reached him. In front of the city, in front of the cameras. I took his hand. It was warm, solid, and real. I turned to the microphone, his hand in mine. "I'm staying," I said, my voice clear and strong. The crowd quieted. "I'm staying, but from now on, we count slow. We count together, with this city." A fisherman, the one who had started the countdown chant, pushed his way to the counter. He threw a $10 bill down. "For the diner," he said. "Count it." Another threw a 5. A woman threw a 20. The counter was flooded with bills. Real tips. Trent, his face streaked with tears, went behind the counter. He opened the till, and he began to count, his voice growing stronger with every number. No, 110, 115, 118. The number, my number, $118. It rang out like a chorus. The city cheered. Ricardo leaned down, his lips brushing my ear, his voice for me alone, a promise in the middle of the noise. "From now on, Lena, anytime they short you, I will make them count again." I turned, my hand tightening in his. I looked at the crowd, at our city. "Not I," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "We." The lights of Rookhaven seemed brighter that night. The Solstice Urban Group indefinitely postponed the New Key project. The North Key Integrity Commission began its work, and it started with the Guild Harbor Trust and North Key. Ricardo's crew, they stepped out of the shadows, just a little. They started a community sponsorship officially funding the Integrity Commission. Later, much later, we were in the loft. The rain was a soft, gentle rhythm on the tin roof. The lights of the port were a promise. We kept our promise, the one we'd made on the worn wooden floor. It was warm. It was slow. It was a language of quiet, breathless confirmations. My palm flat against his heart, feeling its steady beat, his forehead resting against mine. It was a language of touch and steady breathing, of hands held and a future promised. It was a count of 2. And it stopped exactly where we had both agreed it should. We had given the city back its count, and as we stood, watching the harbor lights, we knew that if the numbers ever skewed, if the balance ever tipped, we would be there, together, to look them in the eye and say, "Count again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts with us. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button. It helps us get these stories heard by so many more people.